Hi, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Tuesday, September the 19th, with news from Arkansas and around the world. Well, Governor Asa Hutchinson took off today for a trip to Mexico, but before he left, he called in press and told them what he thought about the pending Graham-Cassidy bill to repeal Obamacare that's pending before the U.S. Senate and is close to having enough votes to obtain passage. He says he's for it. This is something of a surprise. Most of the analysis says that this version of the bill is an even deeper cut in Medicaid spending than what's been proposed earlier, and that it will really harm states like Arkansas that had expanded its Medicaid program. Hutchinson said, without citing specific numbers, that that's just not true. He thinks Arkansas will be held harmless in terms of the money it's going to receive. He says, yes, there'll have to be some cost controls. He says, yes, there may be impact on people in terms of being able to get insurance for pre-existing conditions. Maybe we'll need some of those high-risk pools where you pay a lot of money for not much cost. We won't know for sure what the Arkansas plan will look like if this legislation is passed until 2019, which happily is after Governor Hutchinson has to stand for re-election, so he can finesse this through that time. It's still an open question. He says he's worked with several other Republican governors to make this bill acceptable. He says it gives the states flexibility. He likes the idea of a block grant where the state gets to spend its Medicaid money how it chooses. He says some of this money could go to make up for lost payments to hospitals and others when people don't have insurance anymore and have to get uncompensated care. Well, we'll see. Somebody's going to pay for this. It almost certainly will end in a result in fewer people having health insurance coverage, that's for sure. But that's, of course, already part of his aim. He wants to reduce the number of people on Medicaid in Arkansas as it is. He says he worked with governors in Mississippi, Wisconsin, and one other state on this plan, but there are at least 5 Republican governors who signed a letter today saying they don't like this. They think it'll hurt their states. I tend to think they're right. We're not going to know more about this till later. Governor Hutchinson said he's sorry there's not time for Congressional Budget Office analysis of this. That's because they've got 12 days to pass this with only a simple majority vote rather than having to go through the filibuster blockade, and that's of course what they want to do. They're not going to go regular order on this, and that's just too bad, the governor said. Well, Donald Trump had a big day today. He spoke to the UN. He said he warned North Korea that the U.S. could just destroy them if they don't do right in terms of dealing with the U.S. Of course, that destruction is a threat that's been made to other countries, not so successful in the past. It also could rain death and destruction on unintended people in that region, but Trump's remarks probably are popular with the people who like him here. They've been received with some trepidation in the rest of the world. The Trump administration today also rejected facts again. It said that a report that was prepared by his own administration that shows that immigrants are a net benefit to the country, they pay more in taxes than it costs to serve them, is an ideological piece of work that while if you take out the taxes they pay, they cost more to serve immigrants than other Americans. This is the Trump view of immigration, of course, and I think we can look around us and see what they've contributed to the country and know they're a net benefit, not just financially and economically, but culturally as well. But Trump's intent on reducing their numbers. Back home, closer to Arkansas, Judge Mackie Pierce ruled today in a Freedom of Information suit that the state correction department must reveal labels on drugs it purchases to do executions. A Freedom of Information suit filed by a lawyer, Steve Schultz, is seeking to get that information. The state doesn't want to reveal it because it's a clue that can lead to where these drugs are being obtained, and that's been fairly embarrassing to the state in the past. We've had to do some dishonest dealing and some parking lot transactions to get our drugs to kill people with. It hadn't distinguished the state very much. Piece of sad news today on local politics. Larry Crane, the Pulaski County Clerk, says he's not going to seek re-election next year. He's been a competent public servant for something like 40 years and a courageous one at times. He was a defendant in the lawsuit against the state's ban on same-sex marriages because he couldn't issue marriage certificates under the law, but he filed a ringing brief in which he said the law ought to be struck down, as eventually it was. We'll always remember Larry Crane for that. Also in calling the Secretary of State's hand on a really shoddy attempt to purge voter rolls. He's been a good public servant. The Bank of the Ozarks announced today that it's bought 40-some acres on Highway 10 out at the ranch in Little Rock to build a 250,000 square foot new headquarters building, a sign that it's committed to Little Rock for years to come. It's been here for 40 years. Nobody thought they were going to leave, but it's a good sign that growing bank, the biggest in the state, is going to make a big investment in the city, and the governor and mayor were on hand to cheer that good news. What else do we have? Well, Jason Rapert made a little news yesterday, spoke to the Faulkner County NAACP, said among other things that men shouldn't have to bear the cost of maternity health care coverage and their insurance premiums. And if that, why should we cover breast cancer coverage too for women? I mean, men don't have to suffer that very much, so maybe they shouldn't pay that cost either. Well, anyway, his opponent, Maureen Skinner, tried to question him about where his office was these days since he got out of the financial consulting business. He quickly told the audience that he wasn't going to brook that kind of question from this woman because she was his opponent. They took offense at being categorized as just this woman, kind of a patronizing remark. The senator, as we all know, is capable of a lot more than that. I mentioned yesterday that there's some competing cross currents on the observation of the 60th anniversary Little Rock school crisis. Big slate of events coming up this weekend. Wendell Griffin, the circuit judge and Baptist pastor, issued something of a strong sermon about participating in these events over the weekend after we taped this yesterday. He thinks it's catering to the white establishment in participating in this, and that black people are being pimped for the purposes of portraying progress in Little Rock that hadn't really existed for black people. Well, of course there's been progress. Of course the Little Rock Nine deserve whatever honors they can continue to receive for the courage they showed in 1957. I do think a full look at the events that are scheduled this week, and you can see them in this week's Arkansas Times coming out later this week, are going to provide a lot of opportunity to not have just a one-dimensional view of what's happened in the 60 years since the school crisis. There are big questions about the status of black and white people in Little Rock. There are big questions about the school district taken over by the state after a majority black school board was in place. I think those things will be discussed, and that's proper. Boycotting them is not a way to be a part of the conversation, so perhaps getting in there and pitching is the way to go. Resist. That's the message for me today. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.